Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Contemporary Issues class on the November day after the election, or at least after the day after the announcement that Biden reached 270. So we could call it the day after the election results. That's right, Linda. Yeah.
Say a
Nice to
collective
see.
sigh of relief.
Right. Well, for half of the country, a relief. The other half still thinks they're hanging on, maybe. We will see. Who knows? But at least the political ads are probably over, so that's good. The TV ads have dropped off. We are glad for
Well,
that.
and the emails too.
Yes, yes. It's gone on a long time. Well, nice to have everybody here. I'm up in Frisco, Colorado today. Was skiing at Keystone on opening day a couple days ago and stayed over at my friend Doug Moen's condo. So I'm up in Frisco. And we're going to talk today about something light, Christian famous art and what that means. We'll get kind of cultural today a little bit. But Ron and I thought that we might wait a week before we really talk about the election results in detail, kind of see what the pundits have to say in their expert opinion. And then we'll talk about the results more in depth next week, the local and state and national results and the trends that are coming out of it. And so we'll have a little better chance for discussion next Sunday, we thought. But I do want to allow a few minutes here in the beginning for some discussion on how people are thinking about the election, but we're not going to take the whole hour. So let me do the usual announcements first. In the lower left corner of your screen is the mute button. If you'd click on that, so we have fewer background noises going on. And we are recording this today for future playback as usual. And also, just in case my computer freezes here, since I'm in a different location, it's always possible, could freeze up. Just continue talking for a minute or so among yourselves. And if I don't come back, then click off and we'll just take up next week, but it should be fine. It's always good to know because you never know about computers and what's going on. So nice to see everybody. Any other announcements that we have? If not, let's talk about the election results for, hello, Alexander's. Nice
like
to
to
see
hold
you.
everybody have foot surgery coming up on November 18th, which is kind of exciting for me, but I hold everybody, hope the surgery corrects the things that I need to have it correct so I can start running and biking again. So I'm having a horrible time with my left foot. So if people could hold me in their prayers, it would be great.
Tell me what you're doing.
It's a new surgery. It's called Lapiplasty. There's probably people on the phone that have had bunion surgery before. And the old surgery, they just cut the bone off. Basically, they just shave it and don't really correct it, but they just make it look better. This is Lapiplasty, and it's a 3D surgery that totally corrects the big toe. They'll correct it, actually, and do surgery 3D. So, but that's the surgery I'm having. So I'll be out of pocket for a number of weeks. I won't be able to walk or anything. So
You'll be better later on. Good. Well,
You'll be better later on.
You'll be in our thoughts.
Thank you.
In our thoughts and prayers. Good. Hello, Doug Moen. I'm sitting in your kitchen in Frisco, Colorado. And everything's fine in the condo here. Hi, Nora Lee and Betty and Brett, Vandermillers, Judy. Nice to have everybody here. If you tuned in late, we're going to talk mostly about famous Christian art today. If you're an art lover, you might enjoy it. But we do want to take a few minutes here and talk about the election. Let's do that now and be kind to both sides as usual. What are you feeling today, the day after Biden has been declared the winner of the election? Jim Vandermiller, go ahead.
My comment is that I think we should all be very, very happy about the turnout, which was absolutely enormous. And both presidential candidates got more votes than ever before for any presidential candidate. And so I think it speaks very well for the direction of citizen involvement.
Here, here.
Okay. I wish I could be that positive. I need to talk to some of you then, because I'm concerned about the 71,000 people who voted to have a liar, who voted to have a bully, who voted to have people shout at each other. And I don't know how to get around those 71,000 people.
Well, Betty, I'm not sure what you mean, how to get around them.
Well, how to talk to them, how to be friends with them, how to just how to talk to them, I guess.
I think personally, I think Biden's done a good start of doing that by speaking about he wants to be president for everybody.
Yeah,
And
but I don't know if that group is listening.
well,
Are they,
that's a good question.
the question is, what do you mean by everybody? If it's everybody that agrees with them,
It's a good question too, Shirley.
Yeah.
It's,
think
you-
our-
I'd like to comment about Colorado's vote by mail system. I think it's a great system and it's an example for the country, but I think it needs some refinement where they don't wait till the day of election to have the numbers tabulated somehow so that it doesn't take so long. It's efficient in so many ways, but in the counting, it surely isn't.
Two comments I want to throw in. Number one, I continue to long for the day where we have a popular vote
Mhm.
and not worry about this the electoral college. It
Yes.
doesn't look like it's going to be anytime soon, maybe not even in my lifetime. And then secondly, it's interesting to see the world reaction, the Western Europe, Australia, to our election. And last week, Steve, you had mentioned that you felt the BBC news did a good job of collecting more world opinion and more world news relative to how the world was viewing our election.
Mhm.
I agree.
important to see that. Does anybody think that the mail-in or the vote counting system will change? That the
I
states,
hope so.
they need to.
I would think some of those states that took forever and ever to even count presidential votes will take a lesson from states like ours and some of the others that tabulate so much quicker.
Florida did a pretty good job. I mean, they've got, it's the
Yeah.
most populous state in the union. And they got,
Well,
they started counting prior to.
right. Well, they learned their lesson in, what was it, 2000?
Yeah.
But I got tired myself day after day counting votes. I mean, you know, you watch the TV and you wait and you wait. And
Ron, wouldn't it
I
be,
had it on mute so I could do other things.
Ron, wouldn't it be up to some of these states to change their own laws on how they accept ballots so it comes in quicker or it doesn't drag on as long afterwards?
I think that they should.
The individual states have to make those decisions.
Mhm.
It was also pointed out in Pennsylvania, it wasn't a case where Trump took the lead and then a blue wave came in behind it. It was really a case where the blue vote actually arrived first, but was counted second. So it wasn't
Right.
like, yeah,
Now, that was the
Blue bill came in
Republican
first.
legislature that
So-
overrode the governor who wanted to count things ahead of time. And the legislature said no.
Mhm.
I was actually really happy or really excited that we had 50 states that put in place a mail-in ballot process, because prior to the scenario that we're in with the coronavirus, not all states had a mail-in ballot process. So in some regards, I feel like we as a nation have updated our voting avenues, if you will. And again, like Ron said, it's up to each individual state how they want to draw up their laws for counting federal ballots for federal elections. But I have a feeling going forward, this mail-in option will always be there because of what we were able to, as the United States, what we were able to accomplish with this election.
And I'd like just to add one thing, and that's a lot of people seem to be get upset because it seemed to take so long to count the votes. But Colorado, by law, has they're allowed to start checking their ballots and counting the ballots on October 19th. They started counting the mail-in votes on October 19th. So as they started coming in, they started counting them.
They just
Versus-
don't release the numbers.
They don't release the numbers, but they are allowed to by the state law to start counting them or whatever. So, but certain states can't count them by the way they pass their legislation until after, so there seems to be,
maybe-
that's a,
Maybe they
Hopefully.
need to find a better system of verifying. I mean, that many dead people voting does not work well with me.
As a citizen, I'd like to express appreciation to those Americans who worked in every state, working on counting the ballots. I worked on a couple of elections myself, and at every point, there are Democrats and Republicans working together counting it. So I have every confidence in those workers coming up with an honest count. They do a good job working together.
Well, hopefully there'll be some
There were a lot of
improvements.
there's a lot of that problem that happened not in our state, but in the states that are under question now. They counted a lot of votes from people that were dead.
Yeah.
That shouldn't happen at all. That's just not right.
so-
And not only that, but other ballots that were not correct, shouldn't be allowed. Anyway, that's my opinion. Something's wrong with our system if we have that.
I'm just curious, how do you,
Go
What?
ahead, Karen.
I'm sorry?
Go ahead,
Couldn't hear
Karen. We
you.
didn't hear you.
Oh, I said, I'm just curious, how do you know that? Where did you find that information that people that were deceased voted? I wasn't able to.
It was on the news, and it's one reason that the Republicans are suing. They
And what
found
news?
that much illegitimate voting, that's
On
why
what-
they're doing this.
On which
According to Newsmax TV, there are thousands and thousands of disqualified mail-in votes that should be disqualified.
I
We
can't
watched
really
all
hear
the
you,
news.
but
Yeah, Shirley said that there are reports that there are thousands of disqualified ballots that were not legally cast. So
It's from
we're not going to solve that this morning. Of course, there's both sides of this. And
no, but I'm saying that it's one of the
Yeah.
bad things about this voting by mail.
yes, and there has always been cases of mistakes and some ballots that were not legally cast in every election. They have reported, and with every system that we've got. So hopefully we'll continue to refine it and make it better so it's more accurate. And that's just life. There's always going to be problems
Well,
with
that many
elections.
thousand wrong, I can't put up with that.
Okay, Lois.
We've got see some facts on that.
All you have to do is turn on channel 42. They'll tell you what suing is for and
Okay,
what the evidence is. So now we're getting into the gray area that we don't want to be in, I think.
yeah,
right
we
now.
are. We are. There's two sides to that. We know, and that's why Trump is suing in the courts, so the courts can figure out what's been legal and what's
That's
not.
right. That's exactly right.
So
But I
we
don't know.
will,
How about some art and we'll finish this conversation next week.
right,
Okay.
Linda. I
No.
was
That's
just, thank
fine.
you, Linda. I was
Yeah.
just getting to that, but it's a good discussion. And just a final thought on that too, if I could, Ronna, am I correct that the majority in the Senate has not been decided yet because Georgia is going to have two Senate race runoffs?
Exactly.
It could
Yes,
be,
on
January 5th.
And
January
that's right.
5th.
if,
So we still don't know if it'll be a Democrat or a Republican Congress that
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
will be in place. So that's quite interesting.
the Democrats would have to win both of those runoffs. And the odds of that are very, very long.
Well, we'll see.
Okay,
Okay.
Yeah.
very good. We will talk more about elections next week, and Ron is going to pretty much lead the discussion. We'll look at the rural-urban split, which was so prominent this time. You could see the red and the blue parts of each state were almost exclusively in the cities versus the rural areas. And we'll talk about that and more. But okay, good discussion. Let me launch into a little bit about Christian art today for a little lighter topic. And it's just an interest of mine. I do a little painting myself, oil painting, and enjoy showing some Christian art in our home. And so I wanted to share some thoughts and see what you all think about that too. So I'm going to show a few pictures of famous Christian art pieces like the Last Supper and the Sistine Chapel ceiling, and tell a little background about those. And then I'd love to hear from you all about if you display Christian art in your homes or on your cars, and why or why not. So that's the discussion for the next 45 minutes that we've got. Let me start off by just telling a little bit about the Christian art definition from Wikipedia. Not the end all and be all of definitive information, but I enjoy it. It says, Christian sacred art is produced in an attempt to illustrate the principles and the stories of Christianity, primarily. Most Christian art is built around themes that are familiar to the intended observer. Images of Jesus and the Bible stories are the most common subjects and have been for the entire time that Christian art has been around. Scenes from the Old Testament often play a part in most Christian art. Images of the Virgin Mary, Jesus, and the crucifixion. And for the benefit of the illiterate, in eras past, an elaborate iconographic system developed to identify scenes and was a frequent way that the illiterate people could understand the Bible stories. They would go into a church and they'd see the stained glass, and they could understand the stories better than trying to read them. Early Christian art survives from nearly the origins of Christianity. The oldest surviving Christian paintings are from about the year 70, and the oldest Christian sculptures are from the beginning of the 2nd century. So with that, I'd like to show some of those most famous ones, and we can talk about it. You all have probably been to some of these most famous sites and seen some of these. Let's do the Last Supper first. If I can get my share screen to work. Aha, it is not working at the moment. So hang on with me just a second, and I'll click it a different way. Bring it up here.
While you're looking for it, Steve,
Yes, go ahead, Jim.
a bit of trivial humor. One of the things Jesus said was, if you want to be in the picture, you got to sit on this side of the table.
That's good.
Hmm.
Okay. The Last Supper, can you see it on your screen now? A
Yeah,
picture of that. It's not a perfectly beautiful, clear picture, but that is the way that the actual mural appears. It is and was not a complete, vibrant, clear picture that you would see normally today. The Last Supper by Leonardo da Vinci is actually a mural that measures 15 feet by 29 feet and is on a wall in a Dominican convent in Milan, Italy. It was not a small painting. It was a mural on a wall created by da Vinci. If you go there today, this masterpiece is kept at room temperature, and so only 25 people per visit can enter the room every 15 minutes. And they don't let you take pictures of it either, but there is a framed replica outside of the convent in the main room, which you are allowed to photograph. Painting is about the betrayal of Christ and the institution of the Eucharist. Jesus has just declared in the painting that one of the 12 will betray him. Da Vinci depicts the reactions of each disciple to this news. The apostles are arranged in 4 groups of 3, with Christ in the center as the focal point, with his body in the form of a triangle, many people thinking this represents the Trinity. He provides a calmness and stability in contrast to the astonished expressions of the apostles. Obviously, this mural by Leonardo has inspired innumerable replicas over time in everything from paintings, prints, and all other formats.
I think
Just to-
I've seen
Go ahead.
I think I've seen a picture in St. Andrew of the Last Supper. It's a more modern one, and it showed women in the picture, serving, which was certainly probably the fact. Women were serving.
Yes. And there's also, I saw African-American disciples portrayed in other paintings, and Latinos, and it seems like every ethnic group has had some artist that has reproduced this with their people in the apostles' positions. Just a little bit about the way this was done. By the way, has
I was gonna say,
anybody
have you
been
read
to
anything
Milan, Italy, and seen this mural in person? Has anybody been there?
Yes, I was there and I loved it. It was fabulous, but it was many years ago, so there weren't the restrictions on the temperature and the number of people.
Very good. Was it bright or was it faded when you were there, Susan?
It was faded, but it's been touched up since then. There's been quite a bit of restoration done over the last several years.
It was sort of dark and musty. Very small room.
Right.
Just a little about how it was done. Frescoes at the time were painted on wet plaster, but Leonardo da Vinci rejected that traditional method of the time for several reasons. He wanted to achieve a greater luminosity than the fresco method allowed. In order to do that, he invented his own technique using tempera paint on stone. He primed the wall with a material that he hoped would protect the paint against moisture. But this experiment was a failure because by the early 16th century, the paint had started to flake and decay, and within 50 years, it was a ruin of its former glory. Early restoration attempts were a failure also. Bombing during World War II also contributed to the painting's destruction. and it lost most of its original paint along the way, but was restored in recent years, and very few of Leonardo's original paint strokes still remain today.
When the exhibit was here in Denver, they had a very good film loop about what happened to it all along the way these many years. It was a very interesting film loop that you could sit and watch for several minutes. It was an historical presentation of what happened. Maybe others saw it as well.
Thank you. It's also interesting that the painting has inspired some wild theories. The Da Vinci Code movie was done based on that. Some people speculate that the person here, if you can see my cursor to the right side of Jesus, is supposed to be the Apostle John, but because of the long hair and feminine look, many people have speculated that is actually Mary Magdalene, and that Jesus was married to Mary Magdalene. That was the theory in the Da Vinci Code book and movie, and that after Jesus died, Mary moved to France and had a line of descendants that continue even to today. So that when some people look at the Last Supper, they think that is a storyline that comes out from that. Beyond that, any comments before I go on to the next one? It's also pointed out the 3D effect, that when you're there in person, that the perspective seems to draw you into the painting. You can see the ceiling and the walls especially have a 3D effect. And when you are standing there in person, Susan, maybe that was the case for you, it looked like it would draw you into the depth of the picture.
Hey, Steve, which one is supposed to be Judas?
It says the one with salt in front of him. I'm not sure exactly, Jim. I didn't read which ones were each of the disciples.
Because if the one to Jesus is right is Mary Magdalene, there's only 11 disciples.
Well, it's supposed to be John. It's, supposedly, Da Vinci said that it was supposed to be John at the time of the painting.
Okay.
Okay. Very good. Let's go on to perhaps an even more famous picture from the Sistine Chapel. I am trying to open it up here. Okay. I'll bet quite a few of us have been to the Sistine Chapel. I was there in 2008 and really enjoyed seeing that part, especially called The Creation of Adam by Michelangelo. And I'm looking for my notes here on the Sistine Chapel. Here we go. Okay, The Creation of Adam is one of the most famous religious art pieces of artwork in the world. It's a fresco painting by Italian artist Michelangelo Buoni, who forms part of the Sistine Chapel ceiling, painted 1508 to 1512. The image of the near touching hands of God and Adam have become iconic of humanity. God is depicted as an elderly, white-bearded Caucasian man wrapped in a swirling cloth, while Adam on the lower left is completely naked. God's right arm is outstretched to impart the spark of life from his finger to that of Adam, whose left arm is extended in a pose mirroring God's, a reminder that man is created in the image and likeness of God. Another point is that the fingers are not touching yet. It gives the impression that God is the giver of life, reaching out on his own time to give the spark of life, and that God and Adam are not yet on the same level as would be two human beings shaking hands. There also, in later years, was many observations and hypotheses that the cloak surrounding God on the side was actually in the shape of the human brain, and that was possibly an intentional perspective given by the artist, and that the shape of the brain led also many to think that others to think that this was also the shape of a uterus, and that the green flag cloth at the bottom was an umbilical cord, showing that this was the birth of man. The creation of Adam is thought to depict the passage in the Bible that says God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, Genesis 1:27. The inspiration for Michelangelo's treatment may come from medieval hymns, which also said that God asked the finger of the paternal right hand to give the spark of life. Has anybody been to the Sistine Chapel and seen this one in person?
I have. That's Linda.
Yes.
Linda, what was your impression?
I thought
Well,
that
the whole place was so crowded, and
Yeah.
and then you're standing there looking up, trying not to get a kink in your neck. But so that part wasn't too good, but it was incredibly impressive. I was surprised at the size of the room. It was quite small. I guess I had envisioned a larger room, but it's just, it's inspiring to watch.
That was
I,
mine too. It was, my
I was
impression was it was
bit
very small
amused.
also.
All the white-skinned people, however.
I've seen it and I was quite impressed with it.
Very tall. It's a long way up there for him to be on
Yeah.
scaffolds and do that.
Oh, I can't figure out how he could do it, but obviously he did. Man, and it's amazing.
I read somewhere that he had a sort of a scaffolding
Yeah, he did.
thing, and he would paint lying on his back.
Mhm.
If
That's
you've
what we
never
were told when we toured the building and looked at it, that he painted it lying down.
Yeah.
Mhm.
They say the movie with Charlton Heston as Michelangelo doing that was really pretty accurate, if you've never seen that. I think it's The Agony and the Ecstasy.
The first
I
time
was-
we were there was in 1979, and we were the only people in the Sistine Chapel. And we just laid down on the floor and looked up. So that made it very, very personal.
Wow.
Mhm.
That's-
I've been there twice. I've been there twice. The first time was in 1962 when I was coming back from, I was in the service and on my way back home from overseas. And it was before the whole place, the ceiling and the wall, the Last Judgment, had been restored, and it had been subject to smoking lamps and incense and all sorts of other abuse for, a couple hundred years or something like that. And it was very unimpressive. It was kind of boring, as a matter of fact. I didn't think that was that great. And then about, what was it, 5 or 6 years ago, we went back, and of course, the whole thing had been restored. And I walked in there and it just knocked my socks off. It was just so vibrant and so exciting and everything that, but I was looking at the comparison and the fact that the first time I was just totally bored by the whole thing. and the
Story, Jim.
restoration was just wonderful.
That's a great story.
This is Terry. I was also there, and our guide pointed out the self-portrait of Michelangelo. He painted himself halfway between heaven and hell.
You know, it's amazing
good.
kind of to me that these people are all white, and yet what I've studied about, you know, they believe that Jesus was probably not that white. He was living in a country at that time that people were dark skinned.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Do you see on your screen the head of Christ picture? Does anybody see the head of Christ on their screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. This is a cute little story that I'd like to share with you. There was a news story about this in 2016 called The Head of Christ Famous Painting Originals Found in a Chicago Thrift Store. This is one of the most recognized pieces of relatively modern religious art. It is called The Head of Christ, was painted by Warner Salmon in 1940, and is a famous and often reproduced, especially Catholic piece of art. A local Chicago photographer found two rare originals, these two here, one in oil and one in chalk, inside a Chicago thrift store in 2016. Since then, the photographer sold both pieces to the Colorado writer Jerry Jenkins, the author of the Left Behind series, for $135,000. It was unbelievable, the photographer said in a phone interview. I've had so many people tell me they couldn't believe that I found the originals of this in a thrift store. He made a hobby of going out to garage sales and flea markets looking for valuable paintings and found these in the Chicago Thrift Salvation Army store. The photographer said, I knew the minute I walked into the room what these were because I would see them every day in Catholic school, the Head of Christ reproduction hanging in my classroom. I had studied it later on in life and knew that the originals were out there somewhere, but had not yet to be found. I paid $100 each for these in the thrift store and worked over the next 2 years to find a buyer. The author who bought them, Jerry Jenkins, who wrote the Left Behind series, lives in Colorado Springs, and said that his wife, her grandfather actually knew the painter in Chicago, and that's why he bought the originals. So this was just a good story about try and find something in your thrift store. You never know. Does anybody recognize this said to be famous picture? I had seen it before. in places.
Many Sunday morning bulletins have had that picture on the front of their bulletins in the Methodist Church that I
Yes.
attended.
Also in the Presbyterian church that I went to as a child, we used that very picture.
I have a duplicate of it, I think. Yeah,
Yes.
very
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah, there's a lot of duplicates. My piano instructor, a Catholic nun, gave it to me for my 16th birthday.
Steve, have you read, there's supposed to be some, I believe, that from that people that have seen, was a boy that had leukemia that believed he saw Christ crying in that picture. Have you ever
Really?
have you read? Yeah, there's some stories of miracles that have occurred, but I don't know how true it is. But I've read some things about that. But interesting.
Yes, okay. Just a couple more to share with you before we discuss more. Do you see now the picture of David the sculpture on screen?
Yes.
Yes.
You can see that, okay.
Yeah.
Just a little about this one too. Many people don't automatically think of this as a religious figure, but more just as a famous sculpture from the Renaissance. But actually, this story of David and Goliath is from the biblical story in 1 Samuel, of course. The teenage David had to defeat the giant Goliath with his lesser strength because David was smaller. It took cunning and skill to defeat the giant, so he did so with a slingshot, represented in this sculpture as being over his left shoulder. Michelangelo created this between 1501 and 1504 when he was 26 years old. It is at the Academy Gallery in Florence, Italy, and stands almost 17 feet tall. It was carved from one single block of marble, among the whitest marble in the world. The sling on his left shoulder and the tree trunk behind his right leg were covered in a gold leaf that was worn away during the first 400 years that it was displayed outside until it was brought inside. Many statues before this one portrayed David of the Old Testament after he defeated the giant. But Michelangelo decided to go against the current and portray David before the battle. You can see in his face the concentration of thinking about the battle, the rock hidden inside his right palm, and the slingshot at rest on his shoulder. Michelangelo was 26 when he sculpted this, and he was already the most famous and best paid artist in his area. He accepted the challenge to sculpt this and worked constantly for over 2 years to create this one of the most breathtaking masterpieces of gleaming white marble. He was one of several Florentine artists at the time during the Renaissance that was commissioned to do definite pieces of biblical art. After more than 2 years of tough work, Michelangelo decided this was called Giant, and that he displayed it to the folks who had commissioned it. The proportions are...
Steve, could you put it back on the screen for us to see?
Can't see it.
Oh, you can't see it?
No.
I'm sorry, I thought it was. Yes, let me do that again. For some reason, it didn't show up.
I saw it though, so that's kind of odd.
Yes,
I thought too.
we could see it. Now we can't.
No, you can't now.
Yeah,
Is it
there
back,
it is.
back up now? Can everybody
Now
see
we
it?
can see it.
Okay, that's interesting. Some saw it and some didn't. Okay.
Jane and I have seen it, and one thing is really impresses you is the size of it. As you pointed out, it's what, 17 feet tall?
Yes,
Yeah, it's tremendous.
yes, it is huge.
I notice how his hand is kind of too big. I mean, this hand, the right hand, seems like it's bigger than the left hand. It almost doesn't fit, but
Yes, and some of the critiques, Lois, say that he did that because it was originally thought it was going to be displayed high up in the air. And
oh,
so some of the limbs were done to different sizes.
oh.
It's a joke that his clothes can only be seen by the morally pure.
Morally pure.
I have seen it and I thought it was absolutely breathtaking.
And Linda, when you were there, what I remembered from being there was you went past several other sculptures that were not finished, but looked like they were started and then abandoned by Michelangelo before.
Exactly. I saw those too.
And so it makes you wonder, how in the world would you ever create something so specific after so many failed attempts at other things?
Right. And
It's not
you know,
easy to see
the
it either.
story goes that to get that block of really white marble was pretty interesting because you just didn't find it everywhere.
We didn't find it easily to be seen because they only display it on certain days and then for maybe 2 hours at a time. It was really very accessible.
Not that one.
Well, when I was there, they didn't pack the place, but it was open for, all day long. And there was timed entry. And there were places that was really helpful to be able to sit and just stare at it. It's just amazing.
Yes, and the detail work, I hope you see the hand picture that I just put up. The veins of the hand and the fingers. Just incredible how that could be done with stone.
They had a duplicate of the whole statue in a town, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, where I used to live. And they had it in the Times Square of the town, in the middle of the town. Was everybody looked at it a lot. But it was, of course, a duplicate.
Las Vegas.
Very good. Okay. We've got about 10 minutes left. Those are just some that I wanted to show you. Then I wanted to also show a few modern things that really brought out different parts of religious thought too. Here is one of Jewish. I'm trying to press the right button here. A piece of Jewish art that shows love for the scrolls. And I did not find a description of this, but I thought this was very illustrative of love for the Jewish traditions and the scriptures. Jewish art, it probably has its own histories and tradition, but I'm just not that familiar with it also. But I thought that was a beautiful emotion shown in that picture. And how about as we talk a little about modern art, how many of you have different types of modern art in your houses? Religious art.
I do.
Salvador Dali.
You have
Salvador.
a Dali?
Yes, and
Okay, Linda, what do you have? I've got quite a bit. When I moved into this house, I shopped at the Cherry Creek Art Festival. And then I've picked up things on travel. I've got a very large collage of a Cuban woman when I was in Cuba. I've got a oil painting done by a grandfather of his granddaughter who was about 8 when she died of leukemia, that looks a lot like an angel. I mean, it's modern art, but you can sort of see what he was trying to do is to make her an angel.
Good.
I think also, Steve, we could get into, probably don't have time, what is considered religious art. I mean, for example, you take Picasso's Guernica, which in many ways is religious art if you think in terms of the suffering of people during World War II. Yes.
Yeah. What is
Oh
that?
my God.
Yes.
I've never seen that before.
Then that kind of leads to this question, Jean. Would this kind of art be considered religious art? This is a drug dealer or a drug user with Jesus leaning over him and looks like he's injecting the needle into Jesus' arm. And so some of the commentary online about this was that this is the impression that Jesus loves us so much, he would give his own life for us and our suffering.
Put his
but-
arm in front of the other guy's
And
arm.
figure out what's coming out
That's
of
really
his,
powerful.
what's coming
but
out of
it
his
certainly
mouth.
leaves it open what
There.
the
Yeah.
interpretation
tie
of this
that up.
kind of
You
thing would
tie
be.
up to
Yes,
make
I
veins
think it's,
pop out.
I think it's also important,
Oh.
don't you, Steve, to hear what the artist's interpretation happens to be as well.
Yes,
Help frame the discussion.
yes.
Put his arm in front of the other man's arm.
There's quite a bit that's out there like that. And then, of course, there are pieces that are just meant to be offensive also. I don't want to show really any of those. I'll show one that is kind of an Andy Warhol type of thing. Let me show you this. I don't think this is actually Warhol, but this is this kind of thing that he did also.
Oh, jeez.
I know. Considered to be modern art, blending pop images with religious images.
This morning, Jane and I were listening to three of the great composers, Chopin, Mozart, Beethoven, and it would be true of the artists too. They're men. And I was thinking, you can bet your boots that women were composing music at that time, and that they were painting pictures too. But there are no famous women artists of that period, and you wonder, how much art has been lost because the abilities of women were not recognized.
Yes. Yes, good point. This is a Native American religious art. There is a whole genre of Indian religious art built around the religious.
Is that recent, Steve?
Yes, this is a recent one. Not sure who the artist was on that, but it is surprising to find online how much religious American Indian art there is today. I wanted to show you one other one also here. Hang on with me just a second. I thought this was rather interesting. Okay, this is a picture of a bear climbing up the Devil's Tower in Wyoming. And it is an American Indian religious historical tradition that they said that young Indian girls this was created by young Indian girls that were sitting on rocks, and that a bear came up to try and attack them, and that the rocks grew and to put the girls up high, and the bear tried to climb up the rock and scraped the rock on the sides. It was an American Indian origin story, and that they created art showing that part of their religious tradition also. So many different ways to show religious art. What do you think about the showing of religious art today? Do you think it is on the decline? We know that many Christian art stores have closed, bookstores and stores have closed, and now it's being sold more online. You can't go to as many local Christian stores as you used to.
I didn't know that.
Because they have gone out of business. Yeah, the Lifeway is one, and there are others that have closed. Just the demand for Christian art and local retail stores has really declined. they say.
What was the,
You're on.
Is anybody used to go to local stores like that?
there used to be a Cokesbury store, I think on Hampton.
Yes,
I don't know if it's still there or not. I haven't been there recently.
there's another store that's taken its place, Jim, and it's, I think, somewhat of a bookstore. I'm not absolutely certain, but yes, right there on Hampton.
Yeah.
So
Used to be one over in the shopping center.
Okay.
I don't
And here's
see
an
it.
example of recent art about angels. There's stories about how the angel industry, so to speak, has continued to be very popular with books and sermons and artwork about angels. And this is just one of the representations. Even though the Bible doesn't say anything about angels have wings, it's been a long time way that they've been represented in art.
And the fact that they are male, not female. Sometimes people think of angels as being just female, but they're really portrayed as male in the Bible.
Good point, Jim.
There's, oh,
That
there's
is
still
it.
a lot of sales. There's still a lot of sales of coffee table books with Christian art in it.
Mhm.
You know, if you know, and I just went online and looked up Christian art like at Amazon, and most of them are with sayings in them. They're not pictures, they're inspirational sayings.
Very good.
But
And
there's a lot of, I know there's still a lot of coffee table type books with a lot of inspirational
Yeah.
art.
Trying
that
to
is.
climb out of hell. Trying to climb out of hell and they keep falling on.
yeah, this is one, I'm not sure who the artist was, but it comes from the iconography type of painting where they display heaven and hell. This one with people climbing up the ladder to heaven, but being pulled off into hell. And of course, there's the artwork from Dante's Inferno and many others that display both heaven and hell.
I grew up in a heavily Catholic neighborhood. It seems to me that there was quite a few people that had the quote plastic Jesus on the dashboard of their car, St. Christopher medals, more automotive representations of little statuettes and whatever. Also visiting some of the older folks in the neighborhood, it seemed like, particularly in the Catholic community, there were heavy amounts of Christian art.
Yes, this one's the Pietà from the Vatican, and it's a well-known piece. And for my notes about that, it is, you may recognize it. It's famous for showing a divine quality of Mary and Jesus, of course, showing Jesus after he was brought down from the cross. This one is in the Vatican, and in 1972, a man attacked it with a hammer, and it took many years to restore the sculpture to its original condition. This was
Chuck and I
created-
were in Italy. This is maybe 10 years ago, maybe something like that. Anyway, there are a lot of these duplicates of these kind of statues in Italy. I bought some, yeah, but they're duplicates.
The
this
thing
was
I read
created-
about, the Pietà, which was very interesting, is how Michelangelo displayed his genius that if Jesus were to stand up, he would be about 5'5", and if Mary would stand up, she'd be about 7.5 feet tall.
My goodness, really? Hmm.
Interesting.
Hmm.
Michelangelo created this when he was 23, and he lived to be 89 years old and was quite famous and rich by the time he died, left an estate of $50 million in today's monetary value. He also despised Leonardo da Vinci at the time. They were contemporaries and they did not get along for some reason.
Professional jealousy.
Could be. Could be.
They were
Okay.
competing. They were competing for the same patrons. They were going after the same people's money. So it was a little bit like Trump and Biden. They were going after the same people's votes.
That could be, Jim. Good point.
There's another similar carving by Michelangelo of that same one that's in a church in Bruges in the Netherlands.
Great. Shirley Davis, go ahead.
Yes, there's a bookstore, a Christian bookstore that's off of County Line near University, near Yosemite. It's on
Okay,
the-
thank you.
On the north side in the center there.
County Line and University, a Christian art and bookstore. Great. Okay, well, we need to wrap up. It's 11:32. That's just a little of the light artwork I wanted to share with you today, and I hope you enjoyed seeing that. It reminded me of trips to Europe in the past. Nice to take a look back and see some of the beautiful things created.
Steve,
Yes,
Steve,
sir. Go
when
ahead.
are we going to, why didn't we see some of your art, your painting?
Well, thank you, Gene. Okay, maybe next time I'll show a piece or two just real quick. I appreciate that. I appreciate that comment.
Nice job, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Bye. Everyone have a good week.
Thank you. You too. Next week, we'll talk more about the election, try and get some perspective on it.
Peace, peace.
Peace to everybody. That's right. Take care. Bye-bye.